why, when he was recovering, why would you want to kill yourself? And he said, well, you know that rally you went to support Father Harris? Father Harris molested me, and no one would ever believe me, and I can't live with this pain, so I'd rather die. And his parents were really good parents, and they said, you know what, we're going to make this straight. So they went into the diocese and went into this old bishop, total prick, by the way, and they said, we want three things. We want Harris, this happened to us, we want Harris out of ministry, we want an apology, and we want to be able to send you our counseling bills so you can pay for the counseling. And now remember, the bishop knows all about this, right? And he says, you're trying to bring shame on the church, why are you lying? Get the hell out of my office. And so they left, stunned, and they decided to file suit. And this is before people, it was fashionable and even worth it, even have a chance of winning. They filed suit. So 5 years later, and I remember they just want an apology, amount of mystery, and some counseling bills. They had to settle with Ryan for $5.2 million, largest settlement in history. And the reason why it was so large is because the church knew who this guy was and wouldn't get rid of him. So I'm a journalist. I'm in this press conference where Ryan was, where they're talking about this settlement. And all journalists have dark little, and some of them are bigger than little, but dark little hearts. And so I'm sitting there, and I didn't know victims very well at the time. I didn't know them at all. And so my dark little heart, I'm looking at Ryan and thinking, man, $5.2 million, that's way too much money, for what he went through. And it happened a dozen years ago, and could he move on with his life? And why do you have to waste his life like 5? And I was trying to be very objective about my questions, but she could sense where I was going. And so she goes, you know what, there's a victims meeting tomorrow night. Why don't you come? And I think it'd be helpful for you. And so I said, sure. So I went to this meeting, and there were about a half dozen survivors, ages like in the 20s to in the 70s. And every one of them had the same look. And the only way I could describe it to my wife was that it was like their souls had been shattered. It was like when they were molested by who they believed was Christ's representative on earth and stood in Christ's place during the Eucharist. Their emotional, physical, spiritual, all their states just get so twisted, and it's impossible to untwist it. And to give you, you'll remember this forever. You can thank me later. There was a mom with her daughter, and her daughter, the mom was a Mexican immigrant. Very honored that this priest, as they all are, very honored that the priest took this special interest in the daughter. Like out of all the kids in the parish, this great priest is taking interest in my daughter. And he brought her. He would come to the house every Tuesday night for religious training and take her out to be trained. And after the first couple of times, she didn't want to go, and she told her mom, "I don't want to go. Please don't make me go." And her mom said, "Are you kidding me? This is a great honor. We're not gonna, we're not gonna let down Father." And so she got pushing him out into the path of this monster. And so he would take her out to the rectory or hotel room, where he and up to 7 other priests would rape her.
Oh wow!
At some point, she got pregnant, and so the priest. And for me, this is like worse than all that stuff, and I don't know why, but it shows you their level of depravity. Is they told the mom, your daughter was bad with a kid in school, and if you don't want to bring shame upon the family, you should ship her to the Philippines. I think she's 15 at this time, maybe 16. Ship her to the Philippines for the length of her pregnancy until she gives birth, and then she can come back. So they did that. She got shipped to the Philippines as a teenager, and she almost died during childbirth because of this whole thing. But the pain that this mom was in talking about it, and the guilt that she had for pushing her daughter, was something like I've never seen that kind of anguish. I had never seen it in movies and real life. Nothing. It was just palpable what was going on there. So this is my second reading. On the road to Damascus, a light from heaven blinded Saul of Tarsus, who had been attacking Jews who believed Jesus Christ was the Messiah. He fell to the ground and heard God's voice ask, "Saul, Saul, why do you persecute me?" 3 days later, a disciple restored Saul's sight and baptized him. From that moment, Saul, with a new name Paul, dedicated his life to spreading the gospel of Jesus Christ, becoming one of history's most influential figures. I didn't have a sudden conversion, or rather deconversion, after meeting the sexual abuse survivors, but looking back, it now appears to me to be a road to Damascus moment that I kept safely locked away in my subconscious. I drove home in almost a trance. I'd written so much about the redemptive power of faith I'd never seen in a real and personal way the opposite, the damage religion can do to in the hands of bad people. I looked back on what I'd seen on the faith feed and started to wonder for the first time about the low level of holiness I was seeing. It was the reason why stories were so easy to spot. People with deep faith, real faith, shine brightly against the dullness of the spiritual path. This short supply of holiness was something that began to stick in my throat. A disconcerting fact I washed down with prayer and Christian aphorisms such as don't mix up man's shortcomings with God. It would take a lot of processing and several years for my conscious thinking to catch up to my gut. When I got home, I tried to tell my wife what I had seen at the survivors meeting, but it was impossible to properly put into words. The closest I can come was to say that these people had had their soul shattered and they'd never be whole again. I later run across a better description given by Father Thomas Doyle, whose career was stunted by church leaders after he became, in 1985, a leading advocate for victims of clergy sexual abuse. He said molesting priests and their superiors were committing soul murder. So, in my wise ways, I decided during this time, a little bit before this time, that my megachurch was very shallow in its theology. It was a seeker-friendly church. There were great little rock songs and everything else, but it wasn't really deep. So I decided I really wanted to make my way to the one true church, the Catholic Church. And when you walk in the doors of a megachurch, basically you're members. Boom, that's all you need. But the Catholic Church, that's the big league. So you need to take a year's worth of classes to get in there. So I began this year's worth of classes. About halfway through, the Catholic sex scandal broke across the nation. I started working full-time on there. So I led this weird dual life. I was like, during the day, I'd talk to sexual abuse victims. I would talk to bishops who would lie right to my face. I'd talk to their attorneys who would lie, 100% of the time. And then at night, I would go in and learn about the great Catholic Church and its, the purity of it and its teachings and everything else. And it's a tribute to the human mind that I can keep these two things on a parallel track. I didn't think they had anything to do. One had anything to do with another. You had like this corrupt hierarchy. The Catholic Church was always sort of corrupt, and it was time for cleansing. But then you had this really pure church and these great teachings, and I just thought these paths would never cross. And so about a week before I went to the Catholic Church, this Easter Vigil, which is Easter Eve, I got a tip that a priest was going to have to step down because of a molestation in his past. And believe it or not, until this time, it was fine to have a molestation, or in the case of John Gagan in Boston, 113 molestations, and you could still be a priest. Well, Gagan, I think he could be 112. The 113th one was the time he got pulled.
That's Satan.
He's just Jerry.
I know. Okay. We do not get thunder and lightning in Southern California. So I got this tip. He's gonna have to step down. He's gonna talk to the parishioners. So I go to this church, beautiful church, incredibly fluent community, and it's packed. And it's a huge church. The sanctuary's packed. And this guy gets up there, and like most perpetrators, he gives a victim speech. He says, 19 years ago, I had a boundary violation, which means, sodomy, a boundary violation with a minor. And because that single incident, I have to step down. The diocese is making me step down. And I'm a father of 4 boys. So I'm sitting in the back thinking, personally, just like the rage I would have, and I did have, but the rage I'd have if I was in this church, they had a admitted child molester there, and they never told me. And they left me in the job. It'd be like, imagine if it was in a school. It's the same thing. And so I was looking around to see what the reaction of the parishioners were going to be. So he gets off the pulpit, walks down. As soon as he hits the stairs, everybody rises up like it's the 7th game of the NBA Finals, and they just give him the most thunderous applause. Tears coming down the cheeks of men and women. I don't know what the fuck is going on. And it gets worse because afterwards they have a healing session in the parish hall, and the diocesan officials are there. And so the first thing, it's like a mob there. And so the first thing the mob says is, how do you know he's guilty of this? And the diocesan official says, well, he admitted it. Kind of hard to get around that one. And then they said, well, how do you know it wasn't just inappropriate affection? And that's another big term in the Catholic Church. And they said, no, we know what he did. It wasn't inappropriate affection.